Hello everybody and welcome back to Heart Breathings. Today we're going to talk about something that has been much requested. Every time I do writing sprints or I go on a writing retreat, a lot of people email me and ask about this, so I thought I would cover it today, which is how to write faster. So today I'm going to be giving you 8 tips on how to improve your writing speed. But before we get into it, just one thing that I feel like needs to be said. Right now, especially in the indie market, there's a lot of talk about how you have to write super fast, that everything is about like rapid releases and writing 12 books a year, or, just getting these books out as fast as possible. And there's very little discussion about writing quality books. And I don't want to get into a huge discussion about it because it's really up to you in the end, how you best want to run your career, what quality means to you, and all of that sort of thing. So I'm not going to make really comments on what is quality or not quality, but I just want to make sure that I make it clear that I'm not saying write faster because it's the only way you're going to have any kind of career and you should give up quality to write as fast as you can, because that is not at all what I believe. And I also believe that it can be very dangerous to compare yourself to other writers. This is something I've talked about on the channel before because it's something that I personally have struggled with pretty much the entire time that I've been publishing, that it becomes very difficult for me to watch other people writing 10 books a year and to not be able to replicate that for myself, because I just physically cannot write 10 books a year and have them be at the quality that my readers expect or that I expect of myself. That's not a judgment that someone else can't do that, because I have a lot of friends who are writing that many books and they're great books, but it's just not for me. I can't do it, at least right now with my current skill set. So in the end, you have to let go of comparing yourself to other people. So don't feel that you have to write faster just because someone says every sprint I write 1,000 words, per sprint. That doesn't mean that you should be writing 1,000 words per sprint or that you're not good. Some people only write 200 words per sprint. Some people can only write 1,000 words a day, and that's the best they can do, but those are great words and they're making progress. Some people can consistently write 10,000 words a day, and that's just their process. When you get caught up in comparing yourself to other people and thinking that you're not good enough just because you're a slower writer or because it takes you longer to produce the quality that you want to produce, you really start to get into a toxic relationship with yourself and with other authors. So before I go into the tips on how to write faster, I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not saying I think you should be writing faster, but I think that everybody who's an author is constantly working to get better at something. So if your words are coming more slowly than you wish they were coming and you want to be able to type those words out a little bit faster, I'm talking about these tips so that you can do this for you, not so that you can do this to compare yourself to someone else or to catch up with someone else. And as you go on your journey toward writing faster, the only person you should be comparing yourself to is yourself right now in this moment. When I first started writing, I struggled to even write 500 words a day. I would sit down for hours, the words wouldn't come very quickly. I would be kind of pecking through, like just choosing every single word, and I would spend a couple of hours and end up with 500 words. And that's where I started, and that was okay. Now I do have days where I can write a lot more words than that, and I can write a lot faster. So I'm going to give you some of the tips that helped me to get to this point. But again, I just wanted to make that clear that I'm not saying you should be writing faster. You should always be writing at the level that makes you comfortable, that makes you feel that you're producing quality work. But we're going to talk a little bit about that when it comes to the rough draft process as we go. So here are my 8 tips. Oh, and I also wanted to just say that I apologize for the boxes here in the back, but you guys are going to be seeing that a lot because I'm about a month away from my big move to a new house here in Charleston. And as you know, I'm also 6 months pregnant. So I am just going to be putting boxes kind of wherever, and they'll get moved when they get moved. So hopefully you guys don't mind a few boxes in the shot, because that's kind of just the best I can do right now. All right, so tip number 1 is to plan what you're writing in advance or visualize your scenes in advance. So whether you're a plotter or a pantser, which a plotter is somebody who plots out a lot of their work beforehand. A pantser is someone who flies by the seat of their pants. They just sit down and write whatever comes to mind. But whether you're one of those or somewhere in between, it's very important when you sit down to actually write those words that you have a pretty good idea or a visualization of what scenes you're going to write today. I find that when I sit down with no really good clue as to what is happening in the next scene. Like, I know what I wrote yesterday, but I don't really know where the story's going. Words come very slowly because I'm having to actually kind of figure out the plot and the scenes and what's happening and what's the purpose behind this scene as I'm writing. So it's naturally going to come a little bit slower. But if I show up to my writing sprint sessions, which we'll talk about sprints in a minute, with a note card that has just a few little things about what's happening in the scene. Okay, these two characters are going to argue, or she's going to see him for the first time, and this is how she's going to react. Just whatever. And I actually have taken a moment to not only write those note cards down, but to actually close my eyes and see if I can visualize those two characters in a room together and how things are going to go. I find that the words will often flow so much faster. So one thing that I do in order to get to that point is that when I'm writing, say I finished a writing session this morning, instead of just closing up everything and moving on to whatever's next, I will take a couple of minutes and visualize what just happened in the scene, and then what's the next logical step? Because as we all know, writing scenes is a lot about action and then reaction. So if I've just had a big scene where two characters had a big argument and one stormed out the door, maybe I'm going to sit down, I'm going to visualize, okay, what's going to happen when she walks out that door? What's her reaction? And I'll just think about what types of feelings she might be feeling, who she might go to. She might call up a friend and tell them exactly what happened in this argument. Or if she just found out some interesting information, she might act on that information and go now to check out to see if it's true. But whatever it works for your story, whatever type of genre you're writing, you can usually visualize what just happened on the page or the screen, if you want to call it that, because I sort of visualize my things like a movie in my head, and you can take that to the next level and say, okay, then what happens next? So just take a second to think about what happens next in your story and visualize it, and then jot down a few little notes about what you see happening tomorrow. Then when you come back the next day to start your writing, see if that doesn't help you write a little bit faster. I'm telling you that just 5 minutes of sitting down to visualize and making those notes on what happens tomorrow can make a huge difference in how quickly the writing comes tomorrow. Because when you sit down with a clear idea of what's happening, it doesn't mean you have to have every single little detail and all the dialogue figured out, but just to have that general picture in your mind of what's happening and how it feels and what it looks like to your characters can go a long way to helping you write faster. So step 2 is to let go of perfectionism. So this is something I talked about in my self-doubt video just a week ago or so, where I said, it's okay to just allow the words to suck, especially if you're writing a rough draft. If you want the words to come quickly, you can't be just poring over every single word choice. Is that the right, description? Am I getting the exact word that needs to be here? Did they have this conversation exactly the right words? Am I pulling across like the perfect emotion between them? Of course, it depends on what kind of writer you are. Some people love to have everything perfect, so they do very little edits. But if you're looking at writing quickly and writing faster, one of the things you might try is just totally letting go of those bitty little word choices or those picky little word choices and feeling like it has to be perfect. Because a lot of people who write more slowly, it's because they're really agonizing over every single word choice, when really you just need to get that story out. You just need to figure out what's happening. And then you can go back in the edits and you can pour and agonize over those little tiny word choices as much as you want. But if you want to write faster and getting the story out, then stop worrying about is that the right adjective? Did they have is that exactly what I want her to say? And let me go back and change this 15 times. Just have her say what she says and move on and let go of that feeling that it needs to be perfect. Another way of saying this is to embrace the flow. Just let the words pour out. Don't worry so much about every single word choice, but embrace that feeling of flow, that it's just flowing out of you. And once you can get past that point of doubting every single word that comes across and just saying, okay, it's not perfect, but it needs to just keep going. Because sometimes I will even put in a little note to myself inside my manuscript that says, I know this is not the right word, this sucks, but I'm going to keep going. It's kind of like a little cheerleading section inside my rough draft where I tell myself, just keep going. That's all that matters. And once you embrace that flow of not letting your fingers stop moving, you begin to write faster and more confidently. You can go back and fix it when you get to edits. So number 3, which I'm not going to talk about super long because I've talked about this a lot before, is use word sprints. A lot of times this is also called the Pomodoro technique, which is where you basically set a timer anywhere from, 10 minutes to 45 minutes, whatever you decide is your best like sweet spot. For me, most of the time my sprints are about 25 minutes, and then I take a 5-minute break afterward, and then I do another 25 minutes. And what this does is it kind of tricks your brain to saying, okay, I don't have to write for 2 hours and like pour over everything, because I find that once I've been writing for 40 minutes, I start to have diminishing returns. I start to get tired. I can no longer clearly visualize my scenes. I start to get very easily distractible. When a note comes by, like somebody's texted me, I tend to pay attention to it because I'm kind of getting tired of writing for this long stretch of time. So 25 minutes works perfectly for me because I can sit down and I can say, okay, I only have to focus for 25 minutes. This will play into the next tip as well, but I won't have any distractions. I won't allow anyone to talk to me or interrupt me. I have 25 minutes of focused writing time. I find that it's easier for me to just have that limited amount of time that I have to severely focus, like acutely focus on my work, and then I get a break. Oh, okay. Now I can take that break to sort of visualize what just happened, what's happening next, and it sort of builds up this momentum without me getting tired or fatigued. Now for me, 10 or 15 minutes is not enough time because I've just started getting into the flow when I'm interrupting it. So I find that it's best to go past the point of flow, and then once you feel like you're starting to get tired, that's usually your sweet spot. Now if you want to figure out what your best writing sprint number is, like how much time, then you could just try a bunch of different ones and experiment. So we'll talk about this later as well with a different tip, but just try them. So start with 10 minutes, do 3 or 4 of those today. Tomorrow, try 15 minutes and do 3 or 4 of those, and track how many words you get per sprint, how it feels, and that sort of thing. And then the next day go up to 20, 25, and so on. I know I have friends that like to go for an hour at a time and some friends that like to go only 10 minutes. So it's going to be a very personal thing. But what I found is that I can write just as many words in 25 minutes as I can in 35 minutes, which sounds kind of weird. It's like 10 extra minutes, right? But I just start to slow down so much if I have all that extra time. So just give yourself a little bit of like a week to experiment with different times to see what your sweet spot is. But my sweet spot tends to be about 25 minutes. So the fourth tip goes hand in hand with the sprints, remember, and that's to eliminate distractions. So if you have a lot of little things dinging on your phone, and you've got like a bunch of like notifications popping up in your messenger or whatever on your computer, and you've got like somebody's bouncing on the couch or knocking on your door or whatever, you're just not going to get as much done. And you could sit down for 2 hours and end up mostly distracted the entire time. So one of the best ways to write faster is to eliminate those distractions. And I know it can be tough to like turn on airplane mode or do not disturb on your phone. Sometimes, not everybody has a nice office that's all to themselves. So sometimes you're writing on the couch and your kids are there and they're jumping around and you've got those distractions anyway. But see if you can find and carve out time in your day where you can be completely distraction free. Facebook can wait, text messages can wait, phone calls can wait, your kids can wait, whatever it is that you've got going on that's a distraction. See if you can carve out even, 50 minutes or an hour of time for yourself, even 30 minutes for yourself that is completely distraction free. Turn your phone off, turn it on do not disturb so that you can't hear any little like dings that are going on, and just tell yourself you're going to focus. This is why it goes hand in hand with word sprints, because if you set that timer and you say, I'm not going to allow any distractions during this timer, you tend to get more done because you've got just a limited time without your brain saying, oh my gosh, I have to go 3 hours without like interacting with anyone else, which can start to seem or feel a little bit lonely. So give yourself that 25-minute word sprint. Then give yourself 5 minutes to check your messages, to check your email if you want to, or to go talk to somebody like your roommate or whatever real quick, and then come back and start all over again. So removing those distractions can be very helpful in helping you to write faster. So remember how I was just telling you to experiment with different times, like 10-minute, 15, 20-minute with your sprints? Tip number 5 is to experiment with different times of day and different locations when it comes to your writing. So, you may be stuck kind of in a routine where it's like, okay, I'm a night owl, so I write every night from 9 to 10 p.m. or 9 to, 11 p.m. And I'm always sitting on my couch where, my husband's over here playing video games and, whatever. So you've got this kind of routine of how you're writing, but you're consistently writing slower than you want to write. Well, one of the things you might want to try is to experiment with different times of day and different locations. Now, Some of us, of course, have full-time jobs, or we have other responsibilities where it's like we can't necessarily be a morning writer, or we can't write in the middle of the afternoon. But some of us also have, writing is our full-time job, or we have a lot more flexible schedule. So it's just going to depend on you. But you could always get up a little bit earlier, as painful as that might be for some of us, to try morning writing, or you could try writing right when you get home from work, or right after lunch, or on your lunch break. But just sit down with a notebook, which you guys know I love notebooks and ways to use them. Sit down with a notebook and jot out all the times, like maybe for this upcoming week, that you could try writing when you don't normally write. And use it as a great experiment. Treat it like a game and say, okay, I'm going to try writing over my lunch break for this hour, and I'm going to eat my lunch at my desk, or I'm going to eat my lunch in the car and I'm going to write in the car, whatever it is, or I'm going to go down to Starbucks for lunch and I'm going to try writing at that point. See, for a few days, if you do that, how much writing you get done during that 1 hour at Starbucks or Panera Bread versus what you used to get done in the evenings from 9 to 11. You might surprise yourself that, oh my gosh, I love writing during my lunch hour and I get twice as much done in a smaller period of time. You also might normally be a night owl and try getting up an hour earlier and writing in the morning. You might find that because your brain is fresh, you do get a lot more done in the morning. I used to always be a night owl. But after I had my son 7 years ago, I realized I'm just too exhausted in my brain. My brain is too fried a lot of the times at night. So I became more of a morning writer. And it was so shocking to me because I had never been and never have considered myself a morning person. And I know that with this new baby coming too, I'm going to have to experiment all over again with what times of day work best for me. So I encourage you as the next tip to try different times of day and different locations. Try going out to a coffee shop, try going to Panera or something, try going to your library where things are super quiet, try writing with music, try writing without music, try writing at home, try writing in a different area of your home, like in your bedroom or whatever, and see, like if you track it and you see it in a notebook, like I tried this today and this is how many words I got done, then you can take all that data and you can say, okay, consistently when I go out to Starbucks, I get twice as much done. And then you can start doing that more often. So just experiment with times of day, locations, and types of atmosphere and see what starts to help you to write faster. Number 6 is an easy one as well, and that's to improve your typing skills. It may sound very simple, and it is, but if you're like one of these people that uses 2 fingers to peck out your typing, you're going to be a lot slower than someone who knows how to type and has taken a typing course and knows exactly where their fingers go and they can use all of their fingers to be typing. If you just, use 2 or 4 fingers to type everything out, then probably one of the best things you can do to improve your writing speed is to learn how to type better. Now, I got super lucky that I took a keyboarding or typing class back in high school, and that really helped me a lot. But I also have a friend that introduced me to this game called The Typing of the Dead. And I am a huge zombie fan, love zombie movies and zombie games and stuff like that. And she introduced me to this very cheesy kind of 70s style game called The Typing of the Dead that I could buy for $5 or something on Steam. So I went and bought that, and it's basically a zombie will pop out and they'll have a word over their head and you type really fast, and if you can type the word correctly, it kills the zombie. Very cheesy kind of thing. But I go through and I play that once a week to keep up with my typing skills, and guys, it really helps. So if you look for different typing games online or ways to improve your typing, or if, like I said, you really don't even have a good sense of where your fingers are supposed to go and you've been kind of pecking things out, improve your typing skills. That's going to help you write so much faster because your brain is always going to be going faster than your fingers. So if you can bring your fingers up to speed with how fast your brain is thinking, then you're going to immediately write faster. If anybody knows of some good typing courses or other typing games that are really fun, go ahead and pop those in the comments below. So talking about bringing your fingers up to speed with the speed of your brain and your thoughts, the next tip is to try dictation. Now, I will admit that this is something I really have not been able to get into super well, but I also admittedly have not spent a lot of time trying to make it work. But this is probably the number one thing I hear my fellow authors say improved their writing speed exponentially is dictating. And what dictating is instead of typing out your story, you read your story, you just dictate it, you talk it out. So instead of typing each word and only moving as fast as your fingers can go, you can go as fast as your voice and your mouth can go. So you would just open a program like Dragon Dictation. I believe like Word and Google Docs also have some form of dictation, but they're not going to be as like beefy of programs as something like Dragon Dictation or Dragon Naturally Speaking. But I have heard that some people can get as many as 3,000-4,000 and more words per hour just speaking their text instead of typing it out. Now, there is a learning curve involved in this because we're so used to writing our stories by thinking it and we type it. So when you actually have to say it, you have to learn how to add punctuation and you have to train the software to work with your voice, and there's going to be typos and things that it misunderstood, and you're going to have to learn how to say comma, end quotes, and all these little like commands that have to go with it. So it may be slow going at first as you're learning it or as you're training yourself and you're training your program to recognize your voice, but in the long run, it is one of the ways to increase your speed. What scares me about it and why I haven't really tried it in earnest is because I'm not sure that it will sound right to me to be like, Harper said this or whatever. I feel like I need that kind of delay for my typing fingers because I don't know if I could speak it out. But it could also just be my fear of actually speaking my words out loud and feeling a little bit awkward and having somebody else being able to hear me and what I'm saying with my story. I don't know, but it's just something I haven't personally tried, but I had to mention it here because I do know that in terms of increasing your speed exponentially, it's probably the biggest tool out there, which would be using dictation. So I know that the biggest program that people tend to use is Dragon Naturally Speaking or the Dragon Dictation, and it does cost money, but there are other free programs out there as well that you could try, like inside Google Docs. They do have some dictation if you just wanted to practice it, but then you're going to need some equipment too, like a microphone and that sort of thing. And there's a learning curve, but it could be pretty huge in increasing your productivity when it comes to writing speed. And the final tip that I have for you today, tip number 8, is to be consistent. So if you work on your story a little bit this weekend, and then 2 weeks from now, you pick it up again and you say, okay, what happened? You're going to have to like go back, read through what you wrote last time, try to get back into the like mood and the vibe of that story. You have to try to remember exactly where your thought process was. And you're just constantly like having to go through that process of like re-familiarizing yourself with your story. But if you're consistent, especially when you're drafting your story and you're writing that first rough draft and you try to at least spend time every single day working on that story, you're going to naturally write faster because you don't have that process of having to like read back through and think, what's going on in this scene? I can't remember what was going on with this character or where she was or what she was thinking. I can't remember what I was thinking about this character. You would just be able to say, oh, I know where I was yesterday, and now I'm going to continue on with that today. Being consistent is also something that is going to help you write faster because, like I said, your brain is already in that space. If you follow my tip number 1, you've already kind of visualized what's happening in what you're writing today, and you don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel. But when you are not touching your story consistently, and what I mean by touching your story is at least reading through, working through the plot, thinking about your characters. Even if you're not getting new words, you need to be touching that story on a daily basis. Okay, so maybe you take Sundays off or something, and that's no big deal that you took one day off. But it's when you start to take 4 and 5, 6 days off in between writing, you always have on that 7th day to pick back up where you were and get yourself familiar all over again with the story, with the characters, with what was happening. And you also tend to lose ideas. So you might have had this great visualization and this great idea of what's supposed to happen in this next scene, and now you've forgotten it because you don't really understand your notes anymore, or it's been a week since you even looked at it, or even a month since you last looked at it. So if you're a slower writer, but you also notice that you haven't been like consistently daily working on your story or working on it 4 or 5 times a week or whatever that number is for you, then that would be another good place to start to improve your writing speed, is to be consistent and touch that story every single day. All right, guys, so those are my 8 tips for how to start writing faster. And remember, only write faster comparing yourself to your current skill level, to your current speed. Don't compare yourself to anyone else, because comparing yourself to other people and allowing that to distract you or to make you feel worse about yourself, there's just really no room in that. In writing for that. So eliminate those kinds of thoughts and don't try to write faster just because someone else is writing faster. Write faster for yourself. And of course, We all want to go back and edit our books to the best of our ability and focus on quality books. But when you're writing your rough draft, it's okay sometimes to skip the feeling of every word needing to be perfect and just let the flow of words come out of you. And don't worry so much about the details of every single word. Then when you go back to your edits, it's gonna be a lot better that you've got the story down as quickly as possible. You can fix anything and any word choice that's on the page. Speaking of editing, I do have an entire series on editing. If you haven't seen my series on plotting yet, you might want to check that out. I will link it down below for you, but I'm working currently on filming an entire series on how to edit your novel as well, and that'll be coming up later in the month of May, actually just in about a week or so. Those videos are going to start coming out, so I hope that if you are not subscribed and you enjoyed this video, that you will subscribe to Heart Breathing's channel. Also, make sure that you hit that notification bell to be notified whenever a new video comes up from me. I am 6 months pregnant, so it's been harder to stick to an exact schedule. I try to get new videos up on Thursdays, but here we are on Friday just getting it out. So sometimes they come a little bit late. So it's important that you hit that notification bell so that you will get a notification when a new video comes up from me. I also have a newsletter list linked down below where you can get the How to Plot Your Novel workbook that goes along with that plotting series. I'm gonna have some stuff for you too when it comes to the editing series, so stay tuned for that as well. If you liked this video, please hit that like button down below so other people know that this was a good video on how to write faster, and be sure to leave a comment so I know you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully this will help you get to writing faster. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.